Hello and welcome. It's John Davidson, your host. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Career Coaching After Hours. Happy May, everyone. Although I expect most of you will be watching this here in June and July over the summer, but I can hardly believe we're already up to episode 18 of the series. So thank you for tuning in if you're new. If you've been watching, I appreciate your patronage. And this particular episode is a little uncomfortable. Certainly in 2025, we've been reading about a lot of different layoffs, whether it's the tech industry or the federal government, a whole host of sectors affected. But I want to try to touch on where we can maybe get a little bit of additional data to try to make sense of the numbers that we see in the press and maybe read a little bit deeper than page one, and some resources that might help folks so we can be a little practical and tactical, empathetic. Certainly a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years have been laid off where the position is just simply eliminated and no fault of their own. And it happens to really great brands, really great organizations as well. So this series, as you may know, is audience agnostic, so likely I'm not your career coach, so please don't take any of my opinions as advice that you should necessarily follow. And this is my way to kind of meditate on some of the topics that I either write about or get asked about from clients. So you could say it's a supplement to the coaching and counseling that I do, but I hope you find it interesting or entertaining. Regular disclaimers, like I say, if you really want one-on-one advice, probably you should reach out to a career coach or a career counselor of some kind. And all of this is to the best of my knowledge, May 31st, 2025. So check your sources and buckle up. And as I mentioned, I think when we read about layoffs in the news, there's always kind of some follow-up questions. I certainly have. Why or how many, and kind of what is the fallout going to look like. So if you take a look at my post on LinkedIn earlier this month, or Medium, or however you like to follow me, those links will be here in the deck and then in the video there too. But 2025, like I say, has been a true roller coaster. I don't think any of us quite expected AI-oriented layoffs to hit quite this hard in 2025. Where if we read about layoffs, a lot of times those kind of the other shoe dropping type questions pop up. Why? And is it AI generated? Is it because of tariffs? Is it because of some ramifications from some of the Doge or federal layoffs? But I'll try to dig into some of these resources here and point out a couple of resources I think can help. But like I say, there are a lot of these kind of contextual questions. So even Microsoft had some layoffs here this month, May 2025, and I wanted to try to learn a little bit more about how many, what business units, and I think most of us have to dig maybe beyond our newspaper of record. So we've got the Seattle Times here, but a lot of times I'll go to GeekWire or TechCrunch to try to figure out kind of really what's going on and what those final numbers might look like, and to try to figure out what the human toll will be in kind of the grand scheme of things. So when we hear, for example, 3% of the global workforce, well, what does that mean? Are some of those layoffs going to be staggered? Do some of those folks have opportunities to go to maybe a different business unit in the company? Those kind of things. And I think on a certain level, most of us probably should keep an eye on the labor market and layoffs in general, not just in your geography, whether you live in the Pacific Northwest or West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, what have you. Not a bad idea to see what's kind of going on nationally and also even beyond tech. So you'll see some sources here that maybe are a little tech centric, but again, you could say reverberations in the tech industry could be a bit of a canary in the coal mine. So especially in regard to AI. So what do the numbers really mean? Like I say, a lot of times we see a number or a percentage, and I kind of like to see the qualifying data with those. And there are no crystal balls, so it's not uncommon that I get some phone calls before I read about a layoff if it's somewhere in tech or the Pacific Northwest, but sometimes layoffs take me by surprise. Or some of the sources I subscribe to, I'll hear about it before it gets into kind of the mainstream press, and I'll show you some of those resources. I think a solid place to look whether you're in tech or not, is TechCrunch, because they'll provide kind of a nice snippet of the context. So you can see here, all these snippets are from today, so these are all fresh. But small layoff there at Amazon. But then if we kind of look at the totality of Amazon behavior, not just layoffs, but some of the RTO activities, or some of the quiet firing or performance improvement plans. You know, sometimes we read about a layoff, but there's still other labor-related activity that's still maybe very relevant. Microsoft, of course, was in the headlines pretty recently. Anywhere from about 2,000 to 6,500 jobs being cut. I still don't know what the actual number is, but roughly 3%. So again, that percentage may mean different things if they're maybe staggered, or if that's over a period of time, or if they're looking at global workforce or national workforce there. Another good solid place to go if you want to take a look at not just tech, like you can see on my screen there. So you can actually sort for tech layoffs or federal government layoffs. You can sort by year, which is nice, or employer is Layoffs.fyi. And so there's a handy dandy chart that looks at last year, 2024, and this year, 2025. And we had some rough bumps in a few of these months. So if you want a little bit more context, or if maybe you work somewhere or you're thinking about targeting some employers, you might want to take a look at their layoff track record, maybe even beyond Glassdoor rankings or some of what you might read on LinkedIn. You may want to do a little bit of extra homework if you're going to hitch your wagon to a particular employer, right? Whether it's a tech firm or not. Another really interesting resource that shows you some of the kind of the longitudinal data, kind of over years, over time. Again, here you can search for years, is warntracker.com. So warn, of course, so if you're an employer and you're laying off a sizable number of humans, you have to file a warn notice, W-A-R-N, and those can be subscribed to. I'll show you how to do that here in Washington State. And those are unfortunate, but it does help kind of work, state agencies kind of plan for unemployment benefits or strains on those kind of systems. But again, not a bad idea to take a look at that in the context of how is the economy humming along, maybe even beyond looking at the stock market. Take a look at not just the federal jobs report, but to take a look at kind of what companies are actually doing some of these layoffs. So another good solid source there. Another one I mentioned pretty regularly, GeekWire, and they have a regional layoff tracker for the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be, of course, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and into Vancouver, BC. So a lot of big tech companies are swept up in that. So you can see at the tip top, Microsoft 3% as of a couple of weeks ago, but they don't have a quite solid number for the total number of employees laid off. But you'll even see like Fred Hutch or other research entities, Expedia. So it's not just tech companies. There's Wizards of the Coast, which they make all kinds of cool products, Magic the Gathering, what have you. Starbucks. So again, I maybe would look at some of the layoff trackers in your area, even beyond the techosphere, as it were. So it's another really good source there. That'll be in the links there. But I'm not 100% sure if every state has a method to track warn notices. But if you see on your screen there, this is Washington. So I just pulled that here today. So you can see there's Microsoft up there on the top. Towards the top, there's Starbucks again, there's Tech Systems. But to get kind of a sense of the lay of the land within the context of how is your state economy doing, how are some of the big movers and shakers. So you can see, are these permanent? You can see over off to the side, are these closures? Are they layoffs? Are they permanent? How many workers are involved? And some of this data is I think, some of the best for raw total number statistics there. So we can kind of make some sense there. For example, Microsoft shows about 2,000 workers affected, where some of what I've seen in the press numbers around the 5,000 or 6,000 mark. So maybe just double checking some of those numbers before we take any particular report at complete face value. But One of the links I put in my original post, and I share this link a lot, is the Department of Labor's map where whatever state you live in, or even DC, you have access to job centers and what we call work source centers out here in Washington State. And you should be able to have time to spend with a career coach or somebody to help you with your resume or your LinkedIn profile, your cover letters, what have you. Somebody who might actually be able to show you local, available, right now types of jobs if you need that support. And if you've ever been in a layoff, I mean, sometimes the stress and the shock is quite high, and folks forget to do things like apply for unemployment benefits, or even work with folks to maybe sharpen up the resume or sharpen up LinkedIn, perhaps, maybe before starting the career search in earnest. So I just see a lot of folks, they're maybe not aware that they should probably think about unemployment benefits. A. B, maybe head to your local job center or work source location. Even though some employers will provide outplacement to a firm like a Lee Hecht Harrison or an LHH, if you have those kind of benefits, something you might want to check on. Or if you know somebody that's been affected by a layoff, maybe elbow them or nudge them, get them a cup of coffee, remind them. I have family members where they've been reminded to file for unemployment, whether some folks may just forget, or sometimes there's a pride issue, as in, yes, you're filing for unemployment, you've already paid for those benefits though. So even if it may bonk your pride just a little bit, when I talk to folks about unemployment, typically remind them you've already paid for those benefits. So there's absolutely no shame in going for those benefits, or going to your local work source center or wherever you're at for a little bit of assistance or guidance, because they may just have a knowledge of immediate jobs that need to be filled. So you can kind of stabilize your career, and they may have access to some other resources there for you. So many times I'll elbow clients in my area here, Seattle area, Western Washington, in parallel to services I provide as a career coach, career counselor. Maybe check out your local job center there. So there we go. Okay, hopefully I'm not too high up on my soapbox there, but those are a couple links there if you want to check out my articles or posts on Medium or LinkedIn. I try to do those consistently, but also in parallel. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Medium or what have you, or X or whatever the heck they want to call themselves, or Facebook or Meta, most of my material is on multiple platforms. But yeah, if you'd like to reach out, or if you know someone that needs help from a layoff, you might want to share some of these resources or direct them to their local job center or work source location. Thank you for joining me. Wanted to keep this one short. I help a lot of folks who have dealt with a layoff. It can be very challenging. Feel free to, if you've worked with a career coach yourself, you might want to give that friend or family member or coworker maybe a referral kind of thing. And one thing I might put a pitch in for, if you do have outplacement services as part of your severance or layoff package, in some cases an employer will let you take those dollars and hire the pro that you want if you don't want to work with maybe the firm that they're kind of contracted with. So something to think about. So if you have ideas though, or if I'm off base, or if you think I'm on target, let me know. These are some of the sources I regularly cite, but here's how to get a hold of me if you want to call my main number or send me an email, john@johndavidson.com or john@olympicresume.com. Those are some of my cool, funky, fresh websites, Architect Infinity and olympicresume.com. And I've layered in some music again, so thank you to all the fine artists who provided some of the backing music. So hopefully that breaks up the monotony of my nasally voice just a little bit. So give them a like. And thank you very much for listening, watching. And if you have ideas for future episodes, absolutely let me know. All right, so take care of yourself. Feel free to share this information with folks who might need it. And hopefully I'll see you on the next episode. All right, take care. Be well.